Thanks very much, Mr. Abdurrahman, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. And thank you to all audience. I will start with the subject of minorities in Iran and the conflict between the central and the margin. There are many reasons behind the emergence of minorities throughout the history, including conflicts, invasion, migration, and so on. However, each of these minorities richly preserve their own history, human heritage, and roots that extend deeply into their history. Variety is a apparent factor of the most of the Middle Eastern society, which is essentially ethnic, religion diversity that cover all aspects of the geographical area where they present. In the modern era, due to the conflicts and influence among the great powers over the Middle East, some societies have turned to a small and scattered across the borders. Eventually, few small entities have emerged from them, where they have been considered as a minority in the eyes of the ruling authority in this country. This had been the case for Ahwazi Arabs, Kurds, Azeris, Baluchi in Iran, where they are living on a large geographical boundaries adjacent to the several neighboring countries. As in the case of almost all Iran neighboring countries, the social fabric of Iran is collectively composed of different religions and ethnic compositions. But the most prominent distinction is the ethnicity element, where the dominant Persian ethnicity is essentially considered as another national minority within Iran. Other ethnic groups are Turkish, Kurds, Arab, and Baluchi, and other small nationalities. Not long time ago, and during the Safavid and Qajari dynasties, Iran used to be called multi-nations, or in Persian called Mamalik-e Mahruse, where the non-Persian regions and territories were under the ruling of the central authorities politically without losing their full autonomies and self-governing authorities, and without being necessarily affiliated or entirely subjugated to the central state policy and decisions. The period of the Reza Shah, the founder of the Pahlavi dynasty and modern Iran in the 20th century, was one of the most important periods in modern history of Iran for a non-Persian peoples, when he overthrew the idea of territorial authority, which was very similar to the long-standing model of federalism. This project was aided by some of the Persian chauvinist elite who derived their nationalist ideology mainly based on the idea of the Arab and Turkish hostility and hatred. As a result, the local Arab ruling in Al-Ahwaz has been overthrown in 1925, and ultimately the name of the country has changed to Iran. Thus all the domestics and the foreign policies have been symbolized the dominant Persian identity in the country. The era of Shah the son in Iran was no less chauvinistic than of the father's time. The Shah sought to revive and adhere to the idea of Persian identity derived from the history and the greatness of the Persian Empire, which ended by the Arab conquest. The Persian chauvinist elites, who attached and supported by the state, began their plans to homogeneously sink other identities into the crucible of the Persian identity until the 1979 revolution that eliminated these Nazi-style dreams. But the alternative, that is the Islamic regime, became even worse, as the regime has always promoted the idea of Islamic brotherhood and the spread of justice in the place of the royal tyranny. In general, the Islamic regime of Iran that came after the revolution does not accept the idea of ethnic diversity in Iran. Thus, no individual rights were recognized to the ethnic and religious groups and their followers. This theocratic state depicted itself as an Islam and a religion defender. So this behavior has been used again by the Persian dissidents as an excuse to portray the current regime as an Arab identity promoter, despite its hostilities policy toward Arab countries and Ahwazi Arab inside Iran. After the failure of the Islamic ideological policy internally, the regime sought to stay in power to mix between the motto of the burying religion and adopting the Persian identity. A new Persian elite began to appear under the mantle of the regime, who are no different in its objectives to the Persian chauvinist elite living abroad. They assert that the official identity of the country is solely Persian, and on the basis of which other identities should be dealt with and controlled by the Persian central authority. Among the most prominent supporters of this trend are Iran's former presidents, Hashemi Rafsanjani, Mohammad Khatami, and the current president, Mr. Hassan Rouhani, with the strong support of the heads of security and intelligence institutions. Ironically, the current president's advisor on minority affairs, cleric Mr. Rouhani, cleric Younisi, speaks of pride of the Persian Empire, boasting and admiring its power and dominance, claiming that Iraq is part of the ancient Persian Empire. Even the symbol of the reformist government, the former president of Iran, Mr. Mohammad Khatami, who launched the slogan of establishing civil society, was indisputably focused on the support and the homogeny of the Persian identity of Iran, where he said in a meeting with a Persian society abroad, "We accepted Islam, but we didn't accept the Arab identity." It means that we refused to melt in another identity. The oppression and discrimination against minority in Iran by the state is varied into the several forms. The most important, which is the distribution of power, wealth, teaching in mother tongue, although the Iran Constitution permits it. The discrimination in employment, where the high unemployment rate in cities inhabited by the non-Persian people, such as cities of Al-Ahwaz, Kurdistan, Balochistan, human developments, urban infrastructure, health, water, natural resources, and other resources. While the most Persian areas, such as Tehran, Shiraz, Isfahan, Mashhad, and other newly created cities are being built in. For example, the Arab minority of Iran, which is heavily present in Al-Ahwaz region, has been treated differently than other minorities in Iran, where the central state tried to dissolve and obliterate them through the media stream or questioning their loyalty to the regime, or even worse, when the state denied their existence on their soul. This is repeated occurrence of anti-Arab attitude drawn by the state against Ahwazi minority in Iran, sometimes by denying their identity and sometimes by distorting it, considering them as gypsies or nomads. Not very far ago, and during the Persian New Year celebration, a pro-state TV deliberately did not depict them as indigenous inhabitants of Al-Ahwaz or Khuzestan, which triggers Ahwazi anger and which led to anti-regime protests across the region that immemorially oppressed by the regime. It is quite obvious that the Iranian society today is more than ever prepared for dissent and split due to the central state adopting a central identity and following certain policies to promote and dominate Persian identity internally and regionally. While the Iranian regime claims to defend regional and popular issues such as Palestine and the Houthis in Yemen, but it continues to practice the oppression of its own people on the ground. Therefore, it is clear that this is a double standard in which the Iranian regime has lost all its credibility and integrity to defend these issues. And instead of looking for a solution, the regimes try to overcome instead of looking for a solution or overcoming the outstanding internal issue, the regime sought to suppress and extinguish the voice of opposition. This regime policy in long term may result in a more confrontation between peoples and state. Subsequently, could repeat the same scenario of the fall of the Shah's rule throughout the popular revolution, in which later on, no one knows if everyone accepts the common life within a united Iran.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.